It was an ordinary summer afternoon at the Tower of London. Tourists from around the world bustled about, snapping photos, laughing, and soaking in the rich history that surrounded them. But none of them expected that today, amid the ancient stones and royal relics, they would witness a confrontation that would leave them speechless. Among the crowd was Colonel Richard Blake, a high-ranking officer from the United States military, known for his bold personality and his tendency to challenge traditions wherever he went. With a confident smirk, he turned to his companions and said, "Watch this, I'll get a reaction out of that guard." The guard in question was Thomas Carter, a young but seasoned soldier of the Coldstream Guards, standing tall in his iconic bearskin hat and scarlet tunic. Unmoving, unreadable, and unshakable, or so everyone thought. The tourists watched as Colonel Blake approached, stepping closer and closer to the soldier. At first, it seemed like just another curious visitor testing the patience of the Queen's Guard, something the soldiers had endured countless times before. But today was different. There was an electricity in the air, a sense that something was about to happen. The murmurs grew among the crowd as cameras zoomed in, eager to catch every detail. What followed would not only silence Colonel Blake, but also ignite applause from every corner of the square. Because, on this ordinary afternoon, the world was about to be reminded that the Queen's Guard is far more than just a tourist attraction. They are a symbol of discipline, pride, and the unbreakable spirit of a nation. The square around the Tower of London shimmered under the golden afternoon sun, casting long shadows from the towering stone walls. The air buzzed with the hum of different languages as tourists shuffled from exhibit to exhibit, but their attention quickly shifted. All eyes now locked onto the confrontation quietly brewing between Colonel Richard Blake and the young guard, Thomas Carter. The crowd instinctively formed a loose circle, their curiosity piqued, their phones raised in anticipation. This wasn't part of the official tour, and that made it all the more thrilling. Colonel Blake took another deliberate step forward, his boots clicking sharply against the ancient cobblestones. His towering frame and confident stride radiated authority, the kind that had served him well in military briefings and diplomatic meetings. But here, before the stoic British Guard, that same bravado began to feel strangely out of place. With a glint of mischief in his eye, Blake leaned in slightly, close enough that his words would surely reach Carter's ears. "Come on, soldier. Show me you're alive behind that hat," he muttered, just loud enough for the closest onlookers to hear. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. Was the American officer really going to provoke the famously unyielding Queen's Guard? Thomas Carter, though young, had already endured his share of provocations during his service at the Tower. Tourists had tried everything: jokes, funny faces, even absurd dance moves. He had been trained to ignore them all, to remain the embodiment of discipline. Yet, as Blake's taunting words hung in the air, Carter's jaw tensed, a barely perceptible flicker of emotion that only the most observant would catch. His gloved hands remained perfectly still on his rifle, but there was an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere. The guard was aware. The guard was listening. The tension tightened like a drawn bowstring. Children, sensing the rising drama, fell unusually silent. Parents whispered to each other, unsure whether to intervene or let the scene unfold. The cameras kept rolling, hungry for the moment when discipline might clash with disrespect. Blake smirked again, emboldened by the guard's silence. He waved a hand mockingly in front of Carter's face, a gesture that drew gasps from the watching crowd. That was crossing the line, some thought. The square seemed to hold its breath. Even the pigeons that usually fluttered about in search of crumbs had stilled. For a fleeting second, it felt as though time itself had paused, waiting to see whether the long-standing traditions of the Queen's Guard would hold firm, or whether this bold American would finally crack the stone-faced soldier. And then, as the weight of dozens of watching eyes pressed in, something changed. A glimmer of movement. A shift in stance so subtle, yet so significant that the front rows leaned forward instinctively. The story that was about to unfold would travel far beyond the walls of the tower, shared in whispers and headlines, a reminder that beneath every uniform beats the heart of a soldier, proud, fierce, and human. Colonel Blake's smirk widened as he took one final, daring step forward, almost toe-to-toe with Thomas Carter. The crowd, sensing the imminent breach of the Guard's sacred code of silence, grew utterly still. No more whispers, no more chuckles. Cameras zoomed in, breaths were held. Blake, emboldened by his own bravado and the silent encouragement of the onlookers, raised a finger and pointed directly at Carter's face. With a suddenness that made several people flinch, Carter's rifle shifted. It wasn't an attack, not yet, but a sharp, deliberate stomp forward with his left foot, the butt of his rifle hitting the ground with a resounding crack that echoed of the ancient stone walls. The sound sliced through the thick silence like a gunshot. The tourists gasped in unison, some instinctively stepping back. Blake's smirk faltered, his confidence flickering as he realized he might have gone too far. Thomas Carter's voice rang out next, crisp and commanding, his eyes blazing with a fury that had been held back until now. "Step away from the Queen's Guard," he barked, each word hammered with the weight of tradition and authority. His face remained mostly still, but his jaw clenched so hard it seemed carved from stone. The young guard's whole body radiated tension, coiled tight like a spring ready to snap. Blake blinked, stunned. This wasn't part of the game he'd imagined. The amusement drained from his face, replaced by a flash of uncertainty. For a split second, their eyes locked, the seasoned American colonel and the young but fiercely proud British soldier. And in that silent exchange, the stakes became painfully clear. This wasn't just about personal pride anymore. It was about national dignity, centuries of unbroken discipline, and the invisible line Blake had just crossed. As if to reinforce the seriousness of the moment, Carter took another firm step forward, closing the distance, his towering bearskin hat making him seem even more formidable. His rifle remained pointed down, but gripped with both hands, ready to act if provoked further. The crowd, sensing the gravity of the confrontation, remained rooted in place, torn between fear and fascination. Phones shook slightly in trembling hands, capturing every frame. The tension slowly began to ease, though the square still crackled with the electricity of what had just transpired. Carter resumed his position, his rifle returning to its post with mechanical precision. But his stance remained solid, a silent warning to anyone else who might consider testing the limits of the Queen's Guard. As the tension dissolved, the crowd slowly exhaled, murmurs rising like a soft tide. Colonel Blake, now visibly humbled, adjusted his cap and took several steps back into the cluster of tourists. The smirk that once danced on his lips was gone, replaced by a tight line of embarrassment. Some in the crowd looked at him with thinly veiled scorn, others with a strange sympathy, as if they too had once underestimated the quiet power of tradition and discipline. His earlier confidence had evaporated, leaving him with the heavy weight of public humiliation. Meanwhile, Thomas Carter stood immobile, his face blank, his body rigid. On the surface, he was the picture of stoic duty, but inside, his heart pounded like a drum against his ribs. He had done what every guard was trained to do, protect the sanctity of his post, no matter the provocation, but he couldn't deny the surge of pride that warmed his chest. The confrontation had tested his limits, but he had held firm. The whispers in the crowd turned into a chorus of admiration. Words like brave, professional, and unshakable floated in the air, and though Carter could not acknowledge them, he heard every syllable. Across the square, tourists who had merely come for photos and a bit of spectacle now found themselves moved in unexpected ways. Many had started the day chuckling at the stoic guards, treating them like living statues. But after witnessing Carter's firm stance and measured response, their laughter faded into respect. Phones that had once recorded with the intent of sharing a light-hearted prank now captured something far more powerful, a moment of cultural pride and the unyielding strength of tradition. Later that evening, clips of the confrontation flooded social media. Within hours, Carter's steadfastness had gone viral, earning praise from both sides of the Atlantic. British citizens applauded his defense of heritage, calling him the embodiment of the Queen's Guard spirit, while even Americans acknowledged the lesson in humility their own man had received. The story appeared in headlines, with phrases like "Guard's unbreakable discipline shames taunter" and "Tradition triumphs over mockery." Colonel Blake, watching these videos in his hotel room, felt the sting of regret. He had meant to provoke laughter, to play the part of the cheeky challenger, but instead, he had become a symbol of arrogance and disrespect. In a rare moment of self-reflection, he realized that he had underestimated the weight of what the young guard represented. The centuries-old tradition wasn't just ceremonial, it was a living legacy that demanded reverence. The events of that afternoon lingered far beyond the courtyard's old stone walls. For those who witnessed it firsthand, and for the millions who later saw it online, the incident offered more than just a moment of entertainment or drama. It delivered a profound reminder about respect, discipline, and the invisible weight of tradition. Thomas Carter's unwavering composure became a symbol, not just of military discipline, but of something even broader, the idea that some values transcend amusement, ego, or casual disrespect. Among the tourists, conversation shifted in tone. Many who had previously regarded ceremonial guards as mere photo opportunities now found themselves reflecting on the silent dignity required to stand for hours, enduring heat, cold, and ridicule without flinching. There was a newfound appreciation for roles often overlooked not because they involved visible action, but because they demanded invisible strength. Carter had become, for a fleeting moment, a teacher, delivering a lesson without ever speaking a word. Colonel Blake, once home, found himself replaying the event in his mind. He recognized now that pride, if unchecked, could lead to foolishness, and that not every tradition needed to be challenged for the sake of a joke. While he would continue to be bold and daring in many aspects of his life, he carried away a humbler understanding. Some symbols deserve deference, not because they are perfect, but because they represent perseverance through generations. It was a difficult lesson, but a necessary one, and perhaps all the more powerful because it had come not from a lecture, but from experience. As for Thomas Carter, life returned to its usual rhythm. He reported for duty day after day, standing with the same silent vigilance as before. Public attention eventually faded, as it always does, replaced by newer spectacles. But the event left a quiet imprint on him as well. It reminded him that every moment, no matter how mundane, had the potential to carry great weight. You never knew when someone would be watching, or when a simple act of steadfastness could ripple out to touch countless lives. In a way, both men grew from that clash, one learning the virtue of humility, the other reaffirming the importance of steadfastness. And those who witnessed it, whether in person or through the glow of their screens, walked away with a deeper understanding that tradition, when upheld with honor and dignity, can still inspire, or even in a skeptical world. The courtyard would continue to echo with footsteps and ceremony, day after day, year after year. New faces would come and go, new guards would take their place, and perhaps future tourists would also test the limits of the silent sentinels. But the story of Thomas Carter and the American colonel would endure quietly, a whispered reminder beneath the clatter of boots and the shuffle of cameras that respect, once given, has the power to outlast even the loudest laughter. The impact of the confrontation between Colonel Blake and Thomas Carter did not stop at the courtyard gates. Within hours, bystanders' videos had flooded social media platforms TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, each clip amassing thousands, then millions of views. The stark contrast between the boisterous tourist and the unyielding guard struck a chord worldwide. Comments poured in from every corner, some condemning the colonel's arrogance, others praising Carter's composure as an example of true discipline in an era where such qualities felt increasingly rare. Mainstream news outlets quickly picked up the story. Headlines read, "Silent Sentinel stands tall against tourist taunt," and "Royal Guard's unshaken dignity inspires millions." Talk shows debated the meaning of tradition in modern society, while cultural commentators discussed the deeper significance of respecting symbols of national heritage. Suddenly, Carter became more than just a guard. He became an emblem of values many feared were fading: patience, self-control, and honor. The British public largely rallied behind Carter, proud that their long-standing tradition of ceremonial guards had captured global admiration. Even in America, many viewers expressed embarrassment at Colonel Blake's antics, acknowledging that while humor has its place, there are lines that should not be crossed. Veterans groups, in particular, voiced their respect for Carter, seeing in his stoic response a reflection of military professionalism worldwide. Memes and remixes of the incident sprang up, as is common in the digital age, but interestingly, even the humorous takes often carried an undercurrent of respect. The phrase, "hold your ground like Carter," began trending, used in contexts far beyond the original event, from sports to politics, as a shorthand for staying calm under pressure. In the weeks that followed, tourist behavior at similar sites seemed to shift slightly. Reports noted fewer disruptions and a more mindful atmosphere among visitors. Tour guides began referencing the incident as a teaching moment, encouraging respect for the guard's silent service. For a brief time, one man's steadfastness had rippled outward, altering behaviors and sparking conversations across nations. Let's be honest, in a world that often rewards loudness and chaos, Thomas Carter's quiet strength reminds us that real power lies in self-control, respect, and patience. Whether we're facing everyday challenges or dealing with difficult people, holding our ground with dignity can speak louder than words. If you found value in this message, I encourage you to share this video with friends or family. Let's spread this reminder that sometimes The strongest response is the calmest one. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Carter's place? Let's start a conversation about the importance of discipline and respect in today's world. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.